Welcome to Doc's Lab and our third Master Series. Welcome to Doc's Lab and our third Master Series. I do believe this is the 13th video in our third Master Series, and in this video we want to talk about our actual composing and producing. This is a very difficult concept, and my first suggestion is it can be a study unto itself. There are lots of different types of composers and producers that are doing lots of different types of productions for themselves, for other people, and their workflows and how they go about producing and composing can be very different. And a lot of them have really great results. They are phenomenal producers and composers, but they produce quite a bit differently. So it can be a study unto itself. So I do not dissuade you from taking the time to study other producers and composers and how they go about producing and composing in different situations for themselves, for other people, for different type of productions, for jobs or whatever, and really make it a study unto itself, because it is a very complex situation. You know, in my master series so far on production engineering, we have talked about a lot of some of the most fundamental things I really think you need to focus on, that you need to really think about, fine-tune yourself and refine yourself as a producer, a composer, a performer, and a musician and a composer, so that you are very refined and as refined as possible with all the concepts and ideologies and things that we've spoken of so far. So that is the first thing we want to talk about, because those two things, you know, as far as a study unto itself and really going through all the things we've talked about so far and really focus on refining yourself in those areas. And once we go there, you know, I talked about that on my channel. There's a section that's called about my audio engineering channel, and there's a section and there's a thing on there called Doc's Notes. It's a downloadable notebook, and in that notebook there's a section on composing. All these things in here are ideas and concepts to help you get a production going, to help you get you unstuck, to give you ideas, to give you song forms or concepts that can help you get started into production, help you move through a production, help you get ideas for productions. And it's something that you can add to, you can delete from, you can rearrange however you want, and eventually you will make up your own section in it by adding a page of your guidelines, how you get started, how you keep moving, how you see the production moves one step at a time, because a lot of people do a lot differently. Some people will produce and work through a production very differently, and there's lots of different ideas and ideologies that work great for them that may not work great for you. And so it is a work in progress always. The better of a composer and producer you become, the better your guidelines and your notes and your workflows will become as you make notes about your workflows, how you work through productions, and just like I talked about when we're doing audio engineering. But in this video, we want to talk about basically getting your production, get composing and producing. And, we've talked about a lot of things you really need to consider and you need to refine yourself as a producer. Okay, so the first thing that I would suggest is on the first part of here in composing guides is some kind of direction. In here, there's all kinds of concepts, like what's the weather like? Is it warm or is it cold? Is there something happening? What's the mood? What are you trying to convey? Is it a story, a poem? All kinds of concepts like that. People, places, things, time, emotions. What kind of basic construct? A major, minor, diminished, augmented, kind of construct as far as musically. Basic things to get you more focused in on what you're trying to build. So that's a pretty simple concept. Now, there's a couple different ways as far as basics, how you get going. There's a couple different philosophies. First of all, there's a philosophy that you can start one note at a time. You choose a key, a tempo, a time signature, and just start one note at a time building. You start building the whole composition. Sometimes I'll build like, two measures or four measures that's a chorus or something like that, or a verse, and then build all the instrumentation there for that verse or chorus or whatever it is, or the hook of the song or something. And sometimes I'll basically write the whole song on the guitar or the piano and then start figuring out how I'm going to build the other instrumentation around it as soon as I have the basics. There are tons of different ways to go about this. There's no exact formula, because you will eventually build your own formula with your own workflows and your own guides to help you produce and compose. But in here, normally, I've given some basic ideas. Get an idea going, figure out your key, tempo, and time signature, create a hook. What is the motive of the song? What is the focal point of the song? And normally that's the powerhouse, the hit you part of the song, right? But that's not always true, and it can be different in compositions. I normally work with movements, transitions, and breaks. That way, that everything's a movement, a transition going to a different movement or somewhere else, and a break. So, I work like that and maybe rename things later to different song forms, like, a rock song form or pop song form or jazz song form or something like that. But I'll normally work with transitions, movements, and breaks as I start composing and putting things together. And there's lots of ideas in here that, if things go well and easy, flow through the changes of creation. If you're having trouble, get a basic structure. Different instruments can give different instrumentation. Different rhythms can give inspiration. Different styles and genres. Different timing signatures. Modulating, changing key, changing, all kinds of different things. Points in here about every note's important, every chord is important, to make you really think about taking your time as you produce things, but basically get going. There's tons of different song structures that can give you ideas, structures, that song formats for soul music, country music, alternative, experimental, classical, movie score kind of things, funk, techno, dance, all kinds of things like that, and basic, things that are happening, hooks and motifs and the themes, and variations and all kinds of stuff like that can really help you working through your productions and your compositions. Instrument arrangement. What kind of instruments are you going to use for your production? And that might change, or you might embellish upon that, or that might change a couple times during your composition and your production. So everything's a work in progress, and it really is going to depend on how you eventually set yourself as a producer and a composer. That's a work in progress, like we talked about, because you're eventually going to set up those guides yourself. You're a blank sheet as you get started, and then you start incorporating things into it. Melody, progressions in melody, how you look at that, different harmony concepts to give you ideas and different possibilities, because everything's a possibility and an option. The more of this kind of stuff you understand about instruments and ranges and progressions, harmonies, all this stuff in here, key signatures, musical symbols and articulations and embellishments and the more the more options you have to work from as you work through a production. So there's no set way to tell you how you're going to produce a composition. except for to help you get it started, give you ideas, because there's lots of ways. Sometimes I'll just compile ideas. I'm going to make a rock song, so I'll compile like 20 or 30 ideas together, make 4 8 measure riffs that are really kind of cool riffs going on. Maybe I might make 20 or 30 of those and then go choose one that's really cool, and then start trying to build upon that. Or I might do with different instruments. I might pick up my bass or my piano or my acoustic or my oboe or my sax and start doing that type of thing and putting a bunch of ideas together and then picking the best ones out. I'm starting to work around them, see if I can work them. If it gets to be too frustrating, I set them off the side and work on something else. It can be very different if you're working for yourself or someone else, or you're producing for someone else. You really have to take that into consideration, because you might work a little differently. You might have different guides of how you compose and how you produce for different situations and different environments, and whether it's for yourself or someone else, or it's a job, or it's for a movie, or it's for the gaming industry or whatever. And you kind of have to take that in consideration. But the biggest help that I can give you as far as producing a composition is to get started. Get out your composition software and open your DAW and start producing. Start getting some ideas. Start writing stuff down. Start really immersing yourself into all the things we've talked about so far and really thinking about it. Even if you have to keep the picture open to the YouTube channel that I put up, to keep those things in mind and look at them. And that's what this notebook's for also. I have it open and looking at things while you're arranging things and while you're putting things together to help you work through productions, because sometimes it goes real easy and sometimes it's just kind of fuddling around, that you're just, I've got this little good on my guitar, and then you start building, what am I going to do with the bass with that, with the drums with that? I'm going to add an oboe in that, or a sax or something. Then what is that? That's the verse or the chorus, or is that the hook on the song? That's something you're going to have to work out, because everybody works a little differently. I love big movie score kind of stuff, but a lot of times I like kind of contemporary alternative rock stuff that's, fairly alternative and progressive, because I love my guitar. So, I love classical kind of stuff and things like that. But I kind of gravitate towards that. So I've kind of got a workflow going when I start doing that kind of stuff. But I work differently sometimes in different situations, different environments, and I get different ideas. If I pick up my bass and start writing with my bass, I'm going to get a totally different kind of mojo going than if I did with my piano. Does that make sense? So you get it in your head, what instrument might be better for you to start with, and start compiling ideas and sorting through things out, and then start building. We talked about thinking like a structural engineer, start building things. Every moment in time is a build. So if you got one measure, that's a lot of real estate. 2 or 4 measures, that's a lot of real estate for you to really sit down and take your time and really think deeply about what you're composing in that amount of time. All the instrumentation are happening. It can very much change. Sometimes I'll get going and I think I got this guitar riff going, and that is really cool. But then when I start thinking about all the instrumentation, all of a sudden the guitar gets a lot more simpler, because I want to do a bunch of other stuff with the bass and with the drums, and I want them to all have their moment, and them all being able to speak at their own time. The guitar is going to talk a little bit, the bass is going to talk a little bit, the drums is going to talk a little bit, so they, and it makes it sound like it's more complicated. And always keep in mind that a simple production done really well can be very powerful. And you really can focus in on all your expression and your articulations and, how well you perform, and working within your abilities and trying to keep things simple. You can always embellish upon it. You might have a simple chord progression. Da, 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 da. That might grow as you become a better producer. That might get more complex. Da, 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 da. And you got all kinds of different instruments doing real simple things, but it makes it sound really complicated, because you're taking every moment in time, every small moment in time into consideration, building all the other instruments to where they work really well together. Does that make sense? And it really is a thing about, getting you producing a composition is just to get you started. Get out your software, get it open, your music writing software, and get your DAW on, get your instrument in your hand, and start thinking, what can I do, and think about every moment in time is really important. How can you do different things? You got a guitar that'll go, bah, and the bass goes, dun, 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 and the sax goes, whang, and the drum, and they're all doing different things, different moments in time, and sometimes very simply, but it makes it sound like there's a lot more going on, and what's happening is a lot more complicated, but it's not that hard to perform and to produce. Does that make sense? And we can come out with great sounding stuff that's pretty simple. As you become a better and better musician and producer and composer, that you will understand how all these things eventually have to come together and how to do that within your abilities and within your realm of wisdom and knowledge and your performance abilities and your range of what you can sing and all those kind of things. So it's very hard to set out some kind of format for you. The best advice is just get producing a composition. You can ask me any questions you want on the channel or email me at DocsLabAudio. But just get producing, get putting some things together. As you get to be better and better and better of a composer and a producer, you will start to refine what's happening there because, you're taking the composition and the arrangement, the dynamics of every instrument, the performances, and then how they work together really well into consideration. So every project you do and every composition that's a production unto itself, take your time, have patience, don't rush it, do a good job. And with everything you do in your production, everything you do in your composition, think it through well and thoroughly, and don't be in a hurry because you will become a much better producer that way. At first it might be a little slow going, but as you start to get more and more comfortable and more confident in what you're doing, that you will improve, your speed will improve, it will get to be more fun as you're doing things well, and you will start seeing how you can embellish on simple ideas, with other instruments doing things and not making a mess. You don't want too much going on at any one moment because then it causes a muddy mess. So you really start to, minimalize your instrumentation so that it has more impact. When the drum does something, bam, it has way more impact. When the guitar goes, wah, it's not muddy in the wash of all this other stuff you got going on. It's standing out clear all by itself, or it's got its own moment. And, every little instrument gets some chance to breathe and speak. And you really start thinking about how every moment in time is a moment for you to let something happen. Does that make sense? And it's just something you really just need to get doing. And rather than give you a bunch of restrictive guides to get going, it's much better to just say, hey, get started, bro. Make a composition, produce a composition. Take your time. Think about all the things we talked about. Look at this notebook and, get some ideas and start getting some ideas together, start building upon them, start trying to make all the instruments work together real well, taking every moment in time. And, think about the end product as you're working through it. A lot of songs have a hook. It's the power of the song. It's the hook of the song. Not always, though. Sometimes the whole song is just smoking. And sometimes the hook's pretty good, but, the bridge is just smoking, bro, because maybe not every production you do is a one-hit wonder. And as you do more and more productions, that you will refine yourself more and more and more as a producer and a composer from experimentation, from trial and error, from doing things, from getting workflows together, from putting things together and seeing how it works, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You will progress much better that way if you just keep the mentality just to keep going. Really focus on refining yourself with the things we've talked about so far, and the composition itself will start doing itself. The biggest thing you will do is refine your workflows, how you get started, how you get yourself unstuck, how you keep rolling, how you how you get an idea of where you're going, how that might change, and that's okay, or it's not okay sometimes, or how you develop your actual song form, how long it is usually, da 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 da, on and on and on and on. You will start to develop that as you make notes, and as you build upon that, and as you let that change, and as you let it grow, and as you let it develop into your own personal production and composition workflow and checklist to make sure you're doing things properly every time, not just sometimes, so that you have much better productions happening as you progress and become a better composer and producer. So, peace, self-love. I certainly hope you enjoyed this simple video on getting you producing a composition, and my biggest advice is to just get started. Take all the things we've talked about into consideration, focus on those, refine yourself in those areas, and you will find that your productions are got a pretty good chance of just getting rolling on their own, and you just have to keep on going. Peace, self, love. See you in the next video.